All right, good morning, everybody. It's been just about a year, actually, since I've been back up here. Actually, just around this time. And so, it's really amazing, even after you go through your transitions from being a pastor and a state leader, God had something immediately waiting for me to do. And I didn't delay at all. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I've been doing for the last year and how it pertains to our church and what we're doing here today. And yesterday was a really important day because yesterday was Father's anniversary for his release from Danbury Prison, right? And so we celebrated that yesterday. And as we know, True Father was very much concerned about America. And he spent his whole life here trying to save America. And I want to, let's read a little bit of Father's words on God's hope for America, and that'll give us an idea of where Father's mind has been. Okay, let's read this. Ladies and gentlemen, if America wants to keep the blessing of God in the leading nation of the world, it must form a partnership with God. Do you have God in your homes? Do you truly have God in your church? Do you have God in your society and nation? God is the cement. With God, America will stay together like concrete. But if God leaves, she will be like sand. When the flood comes, everything will be washed away. America's greatness and pride stem from God. With him, America deserves the blessing and can remain as the mightiest nation. With God, you can preserve your dignity and the leadership of the world. If you allow God to leave America, however, this nation will decline. Satanic hands will subjugate it. When this happens, the future of America will be dismal and tragic. America will become a living hell. When God's blessing is great and one forsakes God's will, God's punishment is equally great. In the early 1960s, America seemed to be the hope of the world, and the symbol of America was New York City. Today, however, the world has lost faith in America, and New York City has become a jungle of immorality and depravity. It has been transformed into a city under the attack of evil. Chicago is no different, nor Los Angeles. Throughout all of America, Satan is becoming the master. God has been forgotten in this country, and when forgotten, God can only leave America. Now is the very moment that this is taking place. When the unifying force of God leaves America, nothing will be able to hold America together. The family will break down, churches will divide, and America will become mortally ill because the cells of her body will be decaying. This will be the perfect opportunity for the evil of communism to overtake America. This state of emergency is here now. Someone must do something. There are critics who say, why is Reverend Moon so involved in America's bicentennial? It is none of his business. Ladies and gentlemen, if there is an illness in your home, do you not need a doctor from outside? If your home catches fire, do you not need firefighters from outside? God has sent me to America in the role of a doctor, in the role of a firefighter. That is why I have come to America. God's medicine may taste bitter, and an operation may involve some pain, but the treatment must begin at once. Would a patient complain and push away the doctor's hand when he touches the infected part? For the last 3 years, with my entire heart and soul, I have been teaching American youth the deepest truth of God. They now have a clear concept of what a God-centered family, church, and nation is. They also know the threatening reality America is facing. Thus, they have become determined fighters to bring new life and salvation to America before it's too late. They know the critical state of the nation. They know the grieving heart of God, and they are absolutely determined to turn back the tide, to turn the tide back to God. Their enthusiasm is beautiful to behold. Your dedicated sons and daughters are champions of God, crusading for the victory of God's will. As God's front line, they are declaring war against evil. They are courageously fighting this noble battle, and we must overcome evil. It is our mission to build the kingdom of God here on earth. Therefore, we must build a model of the kingdom of God right here in America, which God loves and has prepared the most. Let's give True Father a big hand for that message. So, what I realized over the last year or so is that America is really struggling right now. We have a lot of problems, and I'm going to share with you a little bit what I see after a year of a lot of things happening, actually. If you think back over the last couple years since the COVID virus hit, it's been incredible what has unfolded in the last few years. As you know, True Father was very much into political action. He founded the AFC, American Freedom Coalition. He was involved with CALSA because he understood that communism was a real threat to America. Right? We've all heard that, have we not? About communism, right? Father spent time in North Korean prison, and he spent a lot of his life in Korea and the United States with victory over communism. So it was a real threat. And in 1988, we thought that communism had ended because the Berlin Wall had come down. But has communism stopped? What do you think? Right? So we kind of fell asleep. And when we fell asleep, the devil never sleeps. He's always working. So, around April the 3rd of 2020, right after the COVID virus had hit, the AFC brothers and sisters kind of got this feeling that maybe we should do a prayer for America. And so we started praying on April the 3rd of 2020, praying for America. We had all the original AFC brothers, Mike Smith, Jim Boothby, Michael Leone, Nick Buskovich, Eugene. There was Mark Anderson. We all came together and we started praying every night for America. David Burgess, Bob Spitz actually initiated it. He sent out an email one day and said, we ought to get together and pray. And I'd actually just gotten a Zoom account, and I was the only one that knew how to operate it. And I said, well, let's do it. And we started. And it's still continued to this day. We have not stopped. It's been over two years now. We're at 870 days, I think, is what we are. We prayed every single night. We haven't missed one night praying for America. So as a result of that, also Dr. Kaufman, too, is a very key person in this prayer group. But as a result of our prayers, and things started to happen, action things started to happen. First thing we noticed was there was this big deal about critical race theory going around. You know, we kept hearing about this CRT, indoctrination of students in schools. And it was kind of a new thing. But the more we started looking at it, we realized that this is Marxist ideas and ideology. And so Jim Boothby, who was part of our prayer, is very active. We've worked together for the last 12 years on a lot of political campaigns, Trump and Romney and things like that. And so we did this is at the Loudoun County School Board. We were the first ones in. We did a rally opposing critical race theory in Loudoun County. And it was a big deal. It actually was like we threw a match on a fire because that picture you see right there, we built that sign. That's our sign. That was by Pierre D'Angelo, built that sign. That stage is from the Maryland Church. And we had actually worked together with Freedom Works and Heritage Action. and we held this rally, and that sign right there has been on almost every media source. Anytime they talk about Loudoun County, they'll show this picture right here. You'll see that it was on all the national news networks. It was used in their media feeds. Fox News actually came out and showed it live, presented it live. So this was kind of our first entree into, action and realizing that communism is actually still very much alive and working through the schools and also in our government and also in corporations. You see it in the big tech with censoring speech and things like this. So these were the people that were there. We had a pretty good turnout. You can see the media was there covering it. And Loudoun County became a firestorm, if you recall. Every time they talked about critical race theory, somebody got, his parents' daughter was raped, and it was hidden. A lot of things from transgender individual. So that was our first entree. And we started working down in West Virginia because Senator Manchin was trying to change the filibuster, and if he had changed the filibuster, we would have been probably under the Communist Party right now, because the Democrats would have complete control of both the House and the Senate and the presidency, and they were wanting to pack the Supreme Court. So it was very, very serious. So we immediately went down, and this sign was when Senator Manchin came to visit a school along with Jennifer Gardner. Sumiko was there, myself. We even brought our dog down there. It was a lot of fun, very exciting. This was the rally we held out front of the Capitol building also as well. Then we went down to places like CPAC. We attended a lot of CPAC events. This is Matt Gaetz. He's a freedom fighter. Very much on the front lines against, excuse me. Very much on the front lines fighting against critical race theory and all the different things that are going on right now. Of course, Washington Times was there at CPAC. That's Charlie Kirk. Here are some of the brothers that we attended with. Doug Burton was there. That's Jim Boothby. He was a AFC leader at the time. So we became very active in working in political areas and networking with different organizations and becoming very active in trying to address some of the issues. Also, some of you may know Thomas Cromwell. He's a longtime early member, and he recently came out with a book. It's called, I have it right here, it's called The Triumph of Good, Divine Providence, the Cain-Abel Paradigm, and the End of Marxism. So this is a very exciting book. You can get this on Amazon, and if you want to know where communism's roots were, how it started, he details step by step how it started back in the early 1950s, went through the universities, and has been on a long march throughout the U.S. to where we are today, which is neo-Marxism, or what's called modern critical theory. It's changed, it's dwarfed from the Cold War into a whole different type of thinking and mindset, which is God-denying, and everything's based around the government and government control, things like this. So we did an interview with Thomas, and we're actually putting his entire book on a podcast so people can listen to it through their ear. So that's a project I'm working with Thomas on right now. Okay, this is Japanese Conservative Union. We attended that. This is, Japan has become, they have one of the largest, JCU is one of the most prominent conservative movement in Japan. This is the leader right here on the far right. Sumiko probably knows his name better. Do you remember his name? Aiba, yeah. He was also very closely aligned with Donald Trump. They were actually very good friends. And that's Sarah Carter there on my right. She's a Fox News analyst too as well. And here he is here, and this is our next door neighbor actually from Indiana. Sister was also there, very active in political action. They had a very nice sushi layout. It was really a nice conference at CPAC. This was down in Orlando in February of this last year that we attended. Okay, so the next thing I started getting involved in is me and Mike Smith formed a nonprofit organization called Affirm America, which is a nonprofit. It's an educational nonprofit organization. And as a result, I also started a podcast just about a year ago. Today's the 21st, so just almost a year ago today. And to date, I've surpassed over 50,000 downloads, and I've reached over 31 different countries worldwide with my podcast. A lot of it is interview-based. I also do a daily news update, 5 top headlines in news and commentary. And it's been an interesting journey. I've had a lot of good experiences doing the podcasts. This is one I did with a Polish freedom fighter he was at CPAC down in Orlando. This was right when Ukraine had broke and had invaded, Russia had invaded Ukraine. And he was really, very, very vocal about what was going on. And he was, being a Polish freedom fighter, they were involved in the Cold War, right? When Russia was going through the Eastern Bloc. So you can listen to his interview on my podcast. You can go back. They're all still there today. Also got a chance to interview Dr. Peter McCullough. He was spearheading a lot of the vaccine mandates and things and giving a different view on vaccines and how they work versus what the media was claiming as far as vaccines. A lot of opposing views on it. Some people thought it was a good idea. Some people didn't like the idea that the government was telling them that they had to take a vaccine or lose their job or be kicked out of the military. So Dr. McCullough is on the front line with that issue. And this was an interview I did with Trevor Loudon. Maybe some of you know Trevor Loudon. He's a pretty well-known national spokesperson. He does a lot of work on Epoch Times, and an incredible person, knows communism inside and out, knows so much detail in how it's been infiltrated into the U.S. and actually into the churches. And he has a DVD out. It's called Enemies Within the Church. It's about 2 hours, and I would recommend you get it. We may show it here some night, but it's really amazing how it has infiltrated the Christian church. It's shocking, actually. It's the way in which it was done is very scary, actually, very scary. But Trevor Loudon is on the front line, and we had a very good conversation. You can also hear that interview with me on Affirm America podcast. Okay, this is Dan Hess. He's a second generation. He's been active with us. It's good to have some young people that have been with us. He was down in Orlando with us, and he's very, his big thing is the birth rates. Yeah, because birth rates have dropped next to zero for like Korea. It's almost, if it continues, it'll Korea and Japan will be like extinct in the next 20 years or so, and same with China. So he's very much wanting to promote higher birth rates, and that's his mission. He likes to talk about that. This was another Chinese woman that was running for Congress in New Hampshire, and man, she'll tell you what's going on because, living in China, she can see the same patterns that she saw in China here in the U.S. How they use the language, the woke when we start talking about the woke, the Chinese they're like, oh, here it is, it's right here, and a lot of them will tell you that it's already here within a lot of our government and schools, as we know. It's very much a very serious situation. Her name is Lily Tang Williams. And you can also listen to her interview too. I interviewed her at CPAC. It's on my podcast. A lot of nice young people there. They're all fired up. So we met lots of youth at the activities. Now this is another one too. I don't know how many of you know Mike Smith, but he had a daughter, Marcia Smith, who was an NCAA national swimming champion. And she got really fired up about the Leah Thomas and the biological males that are swimming in women's sports. And she started her own nonprofit organization called Independent Council on Women's Sports. This was out in Las Vegas in, I think, June 30th or so. These are all former swimmers right here from the different levels, different types of sports, from tennis to you name it, anything with women's sports. Martina Navratilova is a spokesman for her. She did an interview, a recorded interview. And Marcia Smith has been, she's been all over media. She's been on Fox, and Megyn Kelly interviewed her for her own podcast. And it's a real firestorm. So this is a big issue. They even had the Women's Liberation Front, which is a very far left organization that is aligned with this, because they don't agree with the idea of biological men swimming with women in sports. So it brought both sides together on this issue. It was very interesting. It was a 3-day conference. Very interesting. Okay, so these are the 3 big headaches that I realized and found out about. The critical race theory. So this is very, very divisive in the schools. They're teaching this in your schools. If you have grandchildren or children, you need to check with your schools and find out what they're teaching, if they're teaching this critical race theory. Basically, it's just saying that whites have privilege and blacks are victims, and it's just a very divisive way of dividing people along races, and it's not good. And the K-12, it's starting as early as the kindergarten through 12th grade. So it's important to understand and know how it affects your children. My sister was telling me yesterday she's a lifeguard down at the YMCA downtown, and she was giving us an example. There was a little black girl swimming in the pool, and my sister's, if you know my sister, she's very polite, and she was just saying things like, hey, don't, jump on the cord there, you're going to break it, those little dividing, lane dividers. And the girl just kept not listening to her, right? And it got to a point where she just got right in my sister's face and just said, "You're racist." So she was just, this was all in her mind because of what she's being taught in schools. It's a very divisive ideology. And then also the use of pronouns. This is something you see too in schools where you have pronouns because now they're blurring the lines between genders. There's only 2 sexes. It's a complete fallacy. It's not true. There's not more than one sex. But they're blurring the line using the gender issue. Gender is very fluid. It's not precise. And now even our little friend Miriam that comes to our house all the time, she goes to Dublin School. She was saying that they have pronouns in Dublin schools. They have to abide by it. And if they don't use them, they can get suspended from school. I mean, it's just outside the bounds of what's common sense. And we had somebody up that attended our meeting, right? Schmidt from Dublin, right? He was talking about a lot of things like that, right, Susan? And then another thing is just this, and I'd like to know if they're doing it here in Columbus, but they're allowing for children to identify at a different gender, as a different gender, as early as 5, 6, 7 years old. Kindergarten, and some schools are holding that in a file and not telling their parents. And there's some lawsuits in some states where this is happening. So if you can imagine that. A child comes in and says, it's a boy, he says, I think I'm a girl. And they may encourage them, if you think you're a girl, well, maybe you are. But they won't tell their parents. They'll put it in a special temporary file to keep it separate from the parents. Can you believe that? This isn't public schools. And they can lose their job, that's right. So it's as early as K through 12, kindergarten. Little kindergarten kids don't have any idea what gender is or pronouns. You just confuse them. Shouldn't be taught to, anyone as far as that goes. And right here in Columbus, Nationwide Children's Hospital does puberty blockers and reassignment surgeries. They're on the top 5 hospitals that do this type of, It's called the Thrive program. So the Thrive Gender Development Program operates on 5 philosophical principles. And you can just, if you read the language, you can tell where it's coming from. It's so vague, it's just, we approach gender diversity in a supportive and exploratory manner that appreciates all forms of gender identity and expression. What's that mean? So it's just very, unclear. It's not precise. All right, so we know what the solution is, right? We know this is the real solution. These are the consequences of the human fall. Okay, this is hell on earth. This is where Satan has dominion. Satan very much wants to destroy America right now. These are the last days. This is the final battle between good and evil. This is an all-out assault of Satan and evil on America today. No question about it. No question about it. Everything you see with, especially on sex and genderism and the woke culture that you see in corporations, it's just so far out of the principled viewpoint. We can see very clearly what it is, and we have to really fight against it. So, the solution is, one man, one woman, one God, right? One family. That's your solution. So if they're not teaching this in our schools, we have to be very careful, right, where we put our children, especially if they start them in kindergarten. A lot of things springing up are like homeschooling now and charter schools and micro schools. People are really starting to address it. And the most important thing is running for school boards. A lot of parents are getting very inspired to take back their school boards. So the 3 blessings, that's what we need to focus on. This is the truth. This is not what the far left, what the woke, transgender, LGBTQ community is promoting. Okay, so here's our action. We're holding a settlement project this coming Saturday. So me and Chris are involved in this. It's already filled up. We have some young people from Turning Point USA are coming. We have a number of speakers from Freedom Works and Heritage. We have the Perrysburg Stand Up. This is a mother who's running for school board and fighting what's going on up in her city with the school boards and how they're promoting all this whacked out stuff. Center for Christian Virtues, they have the backpack bill that they're involved in, which allows for people to take money, follows the child so they can go to the schools of their choice. That's in our State House right now. Americans for Prosperity. So this is our activity. This is Dr. Frank Kaufman's program, and we're holding one this coming Saturday as part of our steps to move towards taking responsibility for America. Okay, so thank you all very much for listening. That's what I've been doing for the last year, and get involved and let's save America. Okay. All right. Thank you very much.